Let's see it.
2024 is the final battle. They're going after Trump, but if they can get Trump, it means they can get you, they can get me, they can get all of us. He is standing in the way, and that can sound like a campaign slogan, but it's very true. Now we're approaching the most important battle of our lives. Discuss unity.
Well, hello, Patriots. Capt Kyle here, and we have Kelly, and we have the Juan O'Savin. And so,
Hello.
welcome to the end game. And, you know, Juan, I listened to you the other day. Before we do that, I want to pray, but I listened to you the other day about some pretty interesting stuff, and I want to bring that up here in a second, because you're the only person I've heard talk about it. So, first off, let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll get into that conversation. Dear Heavenly Father,
All right.
I thank you for all that you do. Father, I just thank you that you allow us to participate in what you're doing in our world. And Father, we just thank you for you pouring out your spirit upon this land and all around the world, and that people are finding out the truth, because the truth will set people free. Father, we thank you for it. We ask for your discernment, and that you just place a hedge of protection around this call and everybody that's on it. And Father, we thank you for it. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. So you talked about, you're on the other side of the world. You're in South Africa there, and I think that what you
Yeah.
talked about with a Russian warship there with loading up some stuff there, and then basically potentially having the I think it's which the nuclear updates to potentially some systems, because Kurt Weldon basically had been identified as an individual that's been part of basically all of these programs, and that back those 200 or so um, you know nukes, not necessarily the same kind of nukes that we would think of as like warhead nukes, but like tactical nukes or suitcase nukes or whatever
Yeah,
that were
they're a
yes,
smaller nuke. They're what we
yeah,
would
but they
call
were
a
outdated
tactical nuke. Yeah.
and that they weren't able to be functioned. And I heard that a lot of those were actually in the facility where they were trying to revitalize those there in Iran, right? And that when we blew that up, that it was about getting those actually destroyed. And then, I heard you talking about, Kurt Weldon was basically told all that information because he was brought there by the Kremlin and so on and so forth. And I'd heard nobody else ever talk about that, and that these were basically out there in the open. And then, you know, this warship that potentially had those updates, because it kind of tied back to the military officer that was tracking, you know, I guess the code, so to speak, or whatever that was. Can you like
No, let
elaborate
me
on
help
that?
you out here. Let's say
Yes.
it right one time. Okay. So Kurt Weldon, back after 9/11, a couple years later, was asked by Putin, invited to come to Russia, where Kurt Weldon was allowed to meet with their chief nuclear uh, team people, directors of their nuke programs in Russia, and was actually taken out to their nuclear storage facilities and shown inventory and things like that with Russia, with Putin's permission, including their military command. And um, they explained to him that during the era with Gorbachev in power, at the tail end of the Gorbachev years, the end of the Reagan administration, at a certain point, Iran uh, was needing help, and Gorbachev offered Iran anything, including nuclear components, if they needed it. Um, the records had since been destroyed, but it was the belief of these people, including Putin, that about 200 nuclear devices that are of a type they call a demolition device. That's just their internal terminology. We would call it maybe a suitcase nuke or something similar. They're relatively compact nuclear devices that would do an explosion a bit bigger, but on a par with Nagasaki or Hiroshima. And so uh, there's a certain size that's required for all the things that physically have to happen in order to reach criticality, in order to get the timing right to actually get for real implosion. So, or to reach criticality. Um, so, with that in mind, uh, they were basically saying, look, we don't know where they are. The records have been destroyed. The people involved, we've talked to all of them, and we believe that they went to Iran. Um, and so here we're talking about knocking out reactors where they can build nuclear, get bomb grade material, and they're going to have missiles, and including hypersonic, to deliver into Israel, and they can make a bomb. Well, the question is, did they have some stuff that fit that criteria beforehand? I do remember that during the 90s that we were very concerned about the containers coming into the country, and that there was that scuttlebutt even
Yeah,
then
the
that
K cars.
yes, that the container ship could show up and have something like this in there. Um, and uh, there was an incident that was thwarted where something was going to be parked next to the Seahawks Stadium in Seattle on November 3rd, 2019, a year before the 2020 election, and would have been a nuclear detonation that would have been blamed somehow, most likely on Korea. But with all this in mind, there, from the Russian perspective, is 200 missing nukes of some type or style there. Oh, just a second here. Did you want some Habli? No, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Yeah, yeah, I'm good. Did you speak to Khalid? No, that was, I think they were over there. So, all right, all right. Um, uh, they're out having a hookah bar night, and so I'm out here by the hookah bar, and they're wanting to know if I need more stuff for my hookah.
Hookah stuff.
But I'm not smoking hookah, which is just tobacco, flavored tobacco. So the question is, and here's the rest of the story. So even when they might have been conveyed, they were timing out. They have a shelf life, and then in order for the fissile material doesn't degrade, but the triggers do, and so you have to refresh the trigger system to get an actual explosion. Otherwise, it doesn't. It just kind of goes poof.
Yes.
But the material itself, you could take the fissile material, and you could hook up, a bunch of dynamite to it and blow it up, and you'd have a dirty bomb,
Right.
and it could still be problematic, but it wouldn't be the same as an actual nuclear detonation. And so the question is, was there some kind of advanced work that was going on uh, to develop or take some of the material needed to refresh these devices? It's not simple. And so Kurlov, the general in Russia, who was blown up in the scooter attack, he was a very close personal friend of Putin's. Probably one of his closest friends, he trusted him the most, was tracking a couple of devices plus some materials that could be used for refreshing uh, stuff like this. And if you remember when Trump, in the lead up to the 2020 election, and then all the way through the inauguration, there was all these drones running all over, primarily the East Coast, but all over the country. And
They were
Trump
doing a
said,
lot of interstate transport. I mean, tracking up and down the interstates and stuff too,
yes, because there was the belief that, and certainly was being shared around the uh, various places within the security community, government community, that they were looking for at least two devices, two different types of devices or more. And there was some specific information about what those devices were. But the drones, everybody's, who's running this? Who's in charge? Well, excuse me, it was us. And Trump as much as said so, and said obviously they're looking for something nuclear. Uh, and stopped all of the, it's aliens and others bullshit, Russians, Chinese, etc. In part, they were doing mapping. So they had up to date maps because you have places that have natural emissions that can look like shielded emissions, say from nuclear material or something like that. So you have to kind of sift those places out, look at them, and at least know, that that's not the bomb, that's not the bomb, that's not the bomb. So they have, better maps at this point in time. If something shows up that's a spike in that, it would show up maybe more clearly. And you just have to think about, we have a lot of nodes that are choke points that could be very vulnerable. So, for example, when the bridge was taken out in Baltimore with the boat crashing into it, a lot of people don't realize that was a more expensive disaster than 9/11. It cost the country more in revenue with the damage to the ability to ships to come in and out of those harbors and load and unload cargo and like that. Things had to be diverted, and it was fairly radical. That was a more costly event to the United States economy than 9/11 was. That's a pretty harsh statement. So somebody targeted that with exacting precision in order to hurt us. How many other locations in a free country uh, could you hit that could be so devastating? Okay. And if you didn't have the ability to access the guidance system in the ship, um, maybe you need something stronger, or you want to take out something that's harder. That was a relatively soft target. We got lots of other targets that, uh, a concentration of people, some of all fears. Does somebody get a nuclear device into a place with a whole lot of citizens all gathered at one place at the same time? So, with that in mind, here in South Africa, when the ANC took power in 1994, South Africa was a nuclear power. South Africa had enough fissile material for 5 bombs. And Kissinger came over, worked a deal, and supposedly that material was taken to Israel. And by the way, in the late 60s, uh, when Israel had its Dimona reactor working, was creating fissile material, it's widely been reported there was a explosion in South Africa in a remote area, underground explosion, that was a test of the Israeli nuclear bomb. And so there was a relationship to Israel. And so um, the scuttlebutt is, and of course, nothing official has come out. So nobody knows anything officially.
Right.
But this Russian ship showed up in a harbor here in South Africa, was here for a couple days. All the blacked out vehicles and vans and SUVs are coming back and forth, and a handful of trucks. What the hell's going on? Everybody's speculating. Then the ship leaves. And uh, uh, the scuttlebutt was that it involved some nuclear um, uh, equipment, devices, blah, 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 that were taken out of here. And so, where did it go? And the interesting thing is, all of a sudden, all of the ANC people involved in this, suddenly they're flush with cash again. They're dying on the vine. All of a sudden, they got a cash influx right in that time period. Uh, and the government here at the national level survives on graft. It's just a fact of life.
Right.
So they're taking it anywhere it's not nailed down, including, just raping the citizenry that have any wealth of every last cent. Um, then the other interesting thing that's there, you have, and I didn't mention this on Jaco's show the other day, you have a general that went up on a fairly normal military thing to Iran, of all places. But then he gets there and he's talking smack and how they're going to, align themselves, Iran and South Africa, and doing all this other mischief. And so part of the question is, uh, did actually Russia convey some materials to Iran that allowed them to continue to be a threat? Um, the enemy of my enemy is my friend,
Right.
type of thing. And that's kind of the local scuttlebutt. nobody knows exactly for sure. So to say that we know it as a fact or anything like that is bullshit. But it is
I mean, it
interesting
does
that
sound very logical and all of that assumption, but it is still an assumption, but it's pretty good assumptions, right?
well,
But it's still an
with the
assumption.
general, yeah, with the general going to Iran literally right now, this week, this
Yeah,
last 7-8 days, this has been like in the news almost every day
right,
about this situation with Iran. And then uh, here they have what they call the DA, which is the Democratic Alliance, tied very closely to the American Democrats Party. It's Soros funded, and they have some people tied to Israel uh, that are big money people. It's not unknown. This isn't top secret or anything. That have thrown a lot of money after the Democratic Alliance, and it's literally something that is getting assistance out of England. And of course, I've said it. They would deny it, but Soros money is really MI6 money. And MI6 money is done in collusion with the CIA and then Mossad and
right.
German intelligence. They're working, they're tag teaming in there, at least with the former CIA, not necessarily the current, okay, although they're not all riffed out of there yet. So there's this history of kind of collusion to push certain angles for their friends and buddies. What Trump did in raising tariffs here in South Africa, and it's interesting what he did. Of all the countries in the world where he could have taken a delegation from several months ago, early in his administration, South Africa was interesting because when they showed up in the Oval Office, the president, Ramosa, and
Yeah,
his crew with
he,
him,
he
uh,
bitch slapped
kind of
them good. That was good.
well, you got to think about it. I started to say it on Jaco and I got sidetracked, and I apologize, but I'll say it here. You got to think of what was that plane ride like? They're on the private jet. They're not flying
Yeah.
first class. They're on their private jet, right? They got all the
Uh-huh.
money in the world. And in Graft Central, they fly up to D.C. They're going to tell Trump how it is. We have rare earth metals and cobalt and other things you need. And so, they're coming up to dictate terms to Trump. If
Yeah.
you want these things, you're going to have to do this and we're going to have to do that. And you have to understand that this ANC crowd that's running the country right now and this Democratic Alliance crowd, they're pretty heady. The amount of mischief that they're up to. Of all the metals that they have, all the mines they have here in South Africa and the gold and wealth and everything, and they're still up there in Congo as one of the 12 countries causing trouble up in the Congo. Okay, they don't have enough here. They got to go up there and cause more trouble up there. It's
Yeah.
just their nature. They're Marxists. They're openly Marxist. It's not, I'm not just saying it for hyperbole. They are openly Marxists. And so they're raising the tax. In fact, on September 1st, the taxes, which are already high by international standards to the moon, are going up again radically. And here in South Africa, 7% of the population pays about 85% of the total taxes. So it's a tax on the rich and on the business and the producers and the doctors. So just in the last couple years, they've had they've had 25% by tax volume of their population, the highest taxed people leave the country. Coincidentally, that ends up being a number of like 25,000 people, but they're the doctors, they're the money managers, the bank people, the inventors, they're a
Hey,
producer
let me
class.
ask you something. right there in that statement, isn't Trump actually making a way for like all of these business, like billionaires and millionaires, like in all these different countries around the world, basically giving them the opportunity to get out from under the deep state and come into the Americas and be protected?
Well, he especially was targeting farmers, but also the business class.
But I mean, in just different
So,
countries, though, even not just there, but in different, sectors around the world, that he's basically opening the door where they can get out from underneath that tyranny that they're in and basically bring that wealth into the country.
well, the reason South Africa is interesting is South Africa had about 30,000 farmers
Oh,
uh,
yes.
25 years ago. And these were big farms because of the type of land that they have. They're huge land tracts, something akin to maybe Texas, Nebraska types of things, because they're large swaths of land in order to make them productive enough to
Like King
sustain a
Ranch,
crew.
stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they've gone from 30,000 ranchers down to some ridiculous number. I think the number I heard today, if I remember the number correctly, and don't quote me on it, I think it was like 7,000 of the big ranchers. I think somebody else said, more like 10,000, um, uh, which you have to kind of put it in context and the way it was conveyed. Um, these people, a lot of them have left the country, but here's the wild figure. 10% of the ranchers that lived in these areas 25 years ago have been murdered. So the rest of them, where the ranches have been abandoned and other people have taken them over, it's not because they sold them off or did whatever. Squatters came in, took over the ranches, and property was conveyed because the owners were killed, whole families. For comparison purposes, there's about 300,000 farms in America of different sizes, beyond a certain size that really, they're from a tax-based side, they're farmers. Imagine that 10% or 30,000 of our farmers were murdered in the most horrendous ways and their families. What kind of what would we do in America? Okay, would
I
we
mean, even
rise
just
up? I don't know.
2%, not even 10.
You know, so they've lost 10% to murder. In fact, where we had lunch Sunday, yesterday, I guess, at a winery not too far out of Cape Town, about 30 miles out of Cape Town. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful spot. The folks that joined us for lunch, one of their friends just last month that they've known all their life here in South Africa had a small farm here in the vicinity of Cape Town, only, like 30 miles out of Cape Town. This is supposedly a less violent area. Woman in her early 60s. And, literally, she had a small farm that she had 2 or 3 employees helped her with. It wasn't anything massive at all, with a few animals and gardens that she sold some products out of to local restaurants. And she was savagely murdered, raped multiple times by probably a dozen people, according to the autopsy. And then, literally ripped apart. Um,
So is that being targeted to the white farmers, or it doesn't matter, just the farmers at all?
no, it's because she was white.
Yes.
And
They've just flipped the
uh,
script from what it was before to where the evil's just like, we're going back after the opposite, right? Kind of deal.
well, and like here in South Africa, one of the things you have to kind of picture, it's not like in the States. In the States, we might say black or white, but anybody of any, variation might be called black or white. Here there's black with, absolutely black, skin tone.
Right.
And then you have coloreds, and coloreds make up, 60, 70% of the population. Blacks make up, depending on what part of the country you're in, uh, you know, down here in Cape Town area, uh, they were 10%. Now they're 20% of the population. The coloreds were, a far bigger percentage, but they've been being imported in this Soros funded situation. And the white population has gone from about 25% down to about 15 to 17%. And so, uh, one detail that you have to understand, and it really is an important thing. When the settlers came here, the Dutch settlers came here in the 1650s and 60s, just like the Pilgrims went to America at Pilgrim Rock in 1620. When they got here, there wasn't an indigenous population here. In fact, there's been extensive work done showing that the tribes that existed here in South Africa ended at a couple of specific rivers, the Fish River and another river out to the east. And to the north, there's a natural mountain range block. And the problem was they were running longhorn cattle herds and doing a particular type of farming that was very arid that didn't work down in the further south regions. So there was literally, for example, the first Dutch settlers here in South Africa, and it's in their logs, didn't even see a black man anywhere in the area until they had traveled over 150 miles inland 30 years later. They had never seen a black man down in this area of the Cape. And there's lots of records and writing like that. So it was really an uninhabited portion. And here at the Cape area, this southern region that's very large, uh, the only tribes that you did see here were what they called the beach walkers. And the beach walkers would literally, very unsophisticated, they just took whatever washed up on the beach, dead seal, little fish, and like that. And they didn't even have really abodes. They were totally nomadic. Further to the north, in the mountain range area north of town, you get up, 100 miles north, and there was kind of a mountain people, very passive, calm, as the people described them at the time, very sweet, engaging, and they got along famously.
So you're saying
Doing
more
some
so
trade.
that the way things are now has been a non-organic, more a learned.
Well, let me just say this: it was that whatever animosity is going on right now, supposedly a black to coloreds and whites for the black population, the ones that are the agitated ones, and it's not all of them, by the way.
Right.
It's a very thin percentage, but those ones that are all amped up, um, there's no such thing as them being indigenous to this area. They were further north and east. It's a construct that they actually lived here in that in the 1600s.
Right.
And they were never slave traded. None of, for example, the Zulu tribe is just over to the north and east of here. And there was never any Zulus that were traded anywhere in this region of Africa as slaves, and it was actually against the law. In fact, the Brits were intercepting slave ships coming from India and northern Africa, just like the U.S. was intercepting slave ships and groups out of Tripoli there in Libya. They were stopping the slave trade, and it was not allowed down here in this part of southern Africa. Um, and one of the interesting things also you have to understand about this area, I wanted to just get this in here. In this region, you're at the tip, at the Cape of Africa, the southern tip. And so yesterday, where I was dining, to one side of the mountain chain, we were looking at the Atlantic Ocean. To the other side of the mountain chain, in this large bay area, we were looking at the Indian Ocean. This is where the definition of the Atlantic ends and the beginning of the Indian Ocean begins. And so trade before the Suez Canal all came around this region. And so because of a couple of natural harbors, as the Dutch settled and as shipping improved and increased, this became an area where sailors delighted in stopping. And the women in this region were famous for being friends to the merchants and the merchant crews. So this was a vacation paradise. They would spend extra days here. And so on planet Earth, literally, the coloreds in this region are genetically the most diverse population of people on the planet, because the children, the genetics come from everywhere in the world in this mixing pot here. So this large colored race population is kind of, if anybody's ever a mutt, these people are mutts here. Okay.
And that's not a bad thing, no. That's
no,
in the way that's said, it's like a mixing pot of the world, really.
Well, and of course, by the way, um, many of the smartest people on the planet are right here, based out of here. Of course, you know about Musk, one of the folks that we had lunch with yesterday, and
a lot of really
become very
cool
good friends.
inventors have come up with some really incredible stuff from there.
Well, the one that I was just with, he has 40 patents and has won patent infringement cases in 2 major international lawsuits. He's a genius. Remember, this is where the first artificial heart was designed, and heart transplant with an artificial heart was done right here. I was there by the hospital the other day, and there's massive innovations in this area. So beautiful area, but there is an agitator crowd, and there's a desire to break the back of the people in this region. And so the southern portion of South Africa, there's a large movement that's been going on for quite a while to secede from the rest of South Africa. And this Cape exit movement, Cape Union movement, there's several groups that have been working towards breaking off from the rest of South Africa and this Marxist crowd that's taken over. And let me add this one little component. And this has not been said publicly anywhere so far, but I'm going to pop it here with your crowd. Remember, with your audience and many others, I've said that the group that frauded us in the 2020 election in the United States, those people that we have in protective custody here in the U.S., or up in the U.S., I'm not there now, they have said that they frauded elections, flipped elections in 71 countries plus the United States. South Africa is one of them. And everybody knew when Mandela won in 94, it was impossible that he could have won that election legitimately. It's just that nobody was going to go to war over it at the time. And they thought they would pull this back in, and they've been chasing the rabbit ever since to try and get back to sound elections here in South Africa. And this crew that was flipping elections all over the world, one of the places that we have data, extensive data, on how the elections were frauded and thrown is right here in South Africa. And as it comes out, remember I've said to audiences, we're going to get America, you put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then do the people around you, help the people around you. We have to get America back on track. We're going to do it over the election fraud. We're going to show how that the elections in 2020 were frauded, and how these same people that frauded America with Chinese assistance and Cuban supervision and alliances through intelligence agencies, including U.S. intelligence and investigative agencies, we're going to show how that same group did it right here in South Africa. The people in power here are not here legitimately, including, just like with the Democrats in the down ballot in America, the Democrats in the down ballot here in South Africa are, in many, if not most cases, there through election mischief. And
Yeah, because
that's
it
going
didn't
to
make any
affect
sense
the
that
situation.
Trump wins like he wins, and then all these other Democrats get. I mean, how many people, in just common sense, goes and does selection where they say Republican, oh, Democrat, and it just
Yeah.
people just don't vote like that. They never have, really. You may
No.
do that in your city council or something where you actually know these people, or like your school board or something where you actually know the people. But outside of that, you would never do that kind of crazy voting like they think that we're supposed to believe, right?
Well, and so here's the situation in South Africa, for people that may be wanting to watch and understand. I'll do some of the show prep for some of the other hosts now. Um, uh, what Trump did in putting the high tariffs here in South Africa, 50% tariff. Remember, he had the president, all of his crew, they had a fun airplane flight up. They get to Washington, D.C. They're going to tell Trump what to do. In their Marxist clan, in their bubble, they were reaching the pinnacle of power. They were going to leverage and show a U.S. president how it's done.
And then he
And they
shows
get
them
there
the
in the
light.
Oval Office. Yeah, they're gonna, they get in there. They're in the Oval Office. Yeah, yuck it up. But you have to think, Trump, of all the people that he could meet with in the first weeks that he was in office, first months that he was in office, there's a lot of critical stuff going on. And every country that had tariffs on them wanted to come explain themselves, work it out. Honest, we're really good guys. Let's work a deal, okay? They all wanted to be there. Trump puts up at the top of the list South Africa. He lets them get to the front door first, very early in these negotiations. He wanted to make sure to make a point, okay? And so they get there, they get in the Oval Office, and Trump does this Harlem Globetrotters move, dances around the floor in the Oval Office, distracts him with the Franken ball and pants the president of South Africa right there to the world. Embarrasses him in front of the whole world and all of his entourage. And he doesn't do it, this was very scripted out. Trump knows exactly what he's doing here. This wasn't just a lighthearted question. They wanted to make a point. And so he says, "Hey, dim the lights here in the room. Here, put the screen down. I got a question about this. Can you just explain this to me?" And they're showing the videos talking about the fact that all these South African farmers are being viciously raped and murdered, torn apart, murdered. That it's not It's not just shoot them in the head, they're gone. This is done in the most explicit way in order to terrorize the rest of the population. Why have the farmers left? Because a significant number of them, with their farms and holdings and their life, their history being here for hundreds of years, just gave up and left. Putin last year told the South African farmers that if they wanted to move to Russia, they would give them huge tracts of land and
Yeah.
everything they needed to set themselves up again because of what was going on here. And these people are Marxists, Leninists, and Putin's offering them relief because Russia itself has gone from the insanity of the Marxist Leninist way of doing things. Even they don't do it anymore. Trump, as he came in, and then he made this spectacle here of the president and his entourage, offered the same thing to the farmers and business people. If they want to come to America to get out of the way of these monsters, we'll fast track you because these are the producers, these are the scientists, these are the doctors, these are the producers, the employers here in South Africa, and we'll bring you up there. If they have to walk away from these farms and properties they've had in the family for hundreds of years to save their life, their family's life, well, they do it. But a lot of them have tried to stay to wait this out.
So I've got a friend that's there, and I talked with them about it, and that was their biggest thing is that they just built their dream place, and that they were, they're just everything, and it was like they didn't want to leave it all, right? And so they were kind of just rolling the dice, hoping that it stays because they had that opportunity to go, and it was like they just built their dream house and their property and all of that, and it was like, and then you just up and leave it, and it's like that's a hard decision to be walking, as far as what do you do.
Well, again, and the ones that are doing it to save their life. They're having to leave
Yeah,
all sorts of stuff behind to leave. It's a horror. But of course, that's why this mountain range, the farms that we're mostly talking about are up further north.
right.
But now the contagion is becoming more and more prevalent, even down in the Cape area, with this murder that happened just a couple weeks ago, right near where we had lunch the other day, and where it was, very safe, considered very safe here in the Cape area. Now, everybody's carrying a gun.
Yeah, because that's where they're at. They're in the Cape area and stuff, but they felt that it's just starting to encroach on their front door, even where they felt better years ago, but today not so much.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
with that, let's so with Russia, with what's going on right now with Trump and Putin, and I know that we've talked about the nuclear a little bit, but all right, knowing that there's the potential for the nuclear standoff, and we got Trump and Putin basically meeting and eliminating all of the the NATO freaking war hawks and all of that crap, and just totally sidelining all of them and doing this and making their deals behind the scenes. And I think today, whenever they met, basically that was Trump just telling them how the cows can eat the cabbage, as far as like the people that he met with today. And they don't really have a voice in it because they're all the deep state that are wanting this to continue in their minds, right? Because Putin's the evil, he's the bad guy and everything. They gotta have a boogeyman, right? And he's basically making these deals without them and outside of their being at the table, which they never needed to be anyway. But in that aspect, where do you see the potential? Because I know we got what's going on in DC and all that, and we'll get into that in a second. But where do you see the potential if him and Putin, back channel wise, are on the up and up? Where do you see the potential for a nuclear standoff if we're not going to be in that with Russia? Maybe a false flag coming from somewhere else that potentially saying that, or what? What do you see?
Well, again, Putin's not dropping his guard with the West. He's trying to be affable and agreeable to get to a deal. It's in his best interest. Trump is not going to sell Ukraine down the river, or Europe for that matter, but he's also not going to buy somebody else's mischief. The agreement at the end of the Cold War was not 1 inch further east
That's right.
with NATO, and that Ukraine was going to be considered a buffer zone, essentially, that nobody was going to take it. It was on its own. It makes lots of money. It's got all the grain the grain for North Africa comes primarily, or did come, from Ukraine. And, they had a decent economy, a thriving economy. Look, all the mobsters and gangsters and political money laundering was going through Ukraine. Of course, they were fat and happy. Um, so, they were doing just fine. But IMF said that they put $100 million a year in there. That's what Jelen said, aimed at color revolution. Or excuse me, $1 billion a year for 10 years, so $10 billion. So, they wanted what they got. They got what they wanted. A war with Russia. Russia, those biolabs across the Ukraine were a
Yeah.
violation of international law, and Putin said so numerous times, including in front of an unknown that was conspiracy. No, it wasn't. The first place that Russia went into was into those biolabs when they invaded the Ukraine, because the biolabs were working on contagions that were keyed to certain racial groups genetically. And they were testing it on Ukrainian soldiers with family histories back into Russia.
Yeah.
And very, very, very serious stuff. It's like a James Bond movie. Okay. Reality come to life. And, a fiction come to life in reality. And so that's why Russia had to do it. They couldn't just stand by and let it continue until, large swaths of their population are getting sick with some, designer disease. And that was a violation of international law. That was a war crime being set up there. So how wrong was Russia to go in there to protect its own people there in the Donbass? And even with what Russia's demanding within certain of the Donbass locations, is it that wrong? If we give Ukraine access to the minerals that are up there to the north side, then they can at least pay their way out of it, and that would be a tit for tat, giveaway back to Ukraine for the future. But Trump isn't doing any deal. Ukraine will have to agree to the deal. Russia will have to agree to the deal.
Right. I mean,
So,
he's just a facilitator.
he's not
I
forcing
understand
anybody.
that, but people have to know that too.
So anybody trying to say that Trump's forcing
no.
it, Trump's not forcing it on them. He's arm twisting them to go for the deal, but he's not forcing anybody. Russia and Ukraine, they're the ones that have lost 1.5 million people on each side. 3 million people dead there, probably more by this time. That was a number, 5-6 months ago.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever know the actual real truth behind any of that.
No. And the diaspora out across the world of Ukrainians living in other places across the world, and even when the war ends, who's going back to Ukraine that's gone to other parts of the world?
Exactly.
None of them. They're not going back in their lifetime. even to live there with all the depleted uranium rounds that have been used by the American side or by the Ukrainian side with their weapons. It's going to be hard to live in a lot of those areas. So no, it's going to be a while. But again, there's Ukraine's
Let me
going to
ask
have to
you
decide.
this.
Europe's going to have to decide. European partners,
Yeah,
they're
so
there as
that's
though
what
they
I
have a
was about
stake
to
in this,
ask you.
but
Is that today when
they're
Trump was talking to all them, basically everything, Kelly brought this to my attention because I didn't get to see it, but every time that they would respond to something of the nature of what the agreement potentially was, right? Their whole thing was, where do we stand on security, right? Where are we on security? Everybody's thing was about security. What do you think that they are referring to in their security? Because I mean, we already have the agreements. You already have, the understanding of what it was supposed to be with NATO and everything. So why do you think that they're so concerned with security when they're the ones that have pushed and encroached and broke the agreement that was initially put together to begin with?
Yeah, so real quick,
remember. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, the way it went is Trump had said that, and possibly security. He just kind of put that in real quick at the end. So he was giving them all a chance to talk. And as they were going around the table, each one of them finished their little speech with, "We're so glad to hear about the security, about, it was so weird how every single one of them mentioned that was really important to them." So I asked Captain, what do you think they were, why was that so important to them?
Well, again, they need a reason for NATO to continue on. Their
Right.
economies are based on a
The boogeyman.
wartime footing economy with boogeymen, and by the way, with American money, U.S.
Right.
money. And so if you have a boogeyman there with Russia, then the U.S. has to continue to fund NATO and supply the arms, the money, everything else. We're afraid of Russia. And what they're really afraid of is that this wartime support, economy, and everything else is going to be dithered away. This occupation since World War II. And part of the rest of the issue is also now, it's not even discussed. Who is going to pay to rebuild Ukraine? If you remember when Zelensky was there with Trump the first time, the real issue.
I hope you must have got a call or something. Hold on. He usually does that whenever he gets a phone call.
You know what else I wanted to ask him, Captain, is when you get to DC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Never mind. Here he is.
I'm
Juan.
sorry. I had a call from you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I had to have a call. That screwed us up. Okay, let me call you right back so we can get a better line here.
Yeah, he messed it up. Call him right back. Yep. Okay. So it does that every time when he gets a phone call in the middle of the.
Oh, so anyway, real quick about DC. You know how for years he had talked about it being turned into museums and all that, and now Trump is kind of talking about rebuilding it and
Smithsonian.
making it. Yeah, so I was wondering what he thought. Like, has his mind changed about what's going to happen to DC?
Yeah, I was going to get to that here in just a second with all that. And I think that's something I can ask him about that too. Because I think the stage is being set for a lot of that specifically. So, all right.
Yeah, so someone's saying in the comments that the press was alluding to that Trump would send troops to Ukraine. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, but I think our presence in Ukraine actually gives the security measures that we're actually there in partnership. And that was discussed before. But actually, military there for security purposes, I don't think that's not going to happen as far as that goes.
And then someone says, will the deal with Russia, Ukraine mean USA will be involved in the rebuild, which gives both sides safety guarantees?
Yes. Now that's something that we were just about to get into talking about, was the rebuild effort and who gets the contracts and the paying of the rebuilding of Ukraine. So, because that's an important aspect of it.
Yeah, so possibly that was a big reason for having them all there because, we're not footing the bill, right? So he's having them all. Part of resolving the war is figuring out how that country's going to be rebuilt.
Yeah,
And who's
pretty
paying
much.
for it.
Yes. So, and we got to thank Juan for being on with us this late. It's 1 something in the morning there right now. So,
Yeah.
1:40 in the morning there where he's at. So,
Yeah, the place looks empty where he is. I guess everybody's sleeping.
yeah, pretty much. And so, it is very difficult sometimes when you're on different parts of the world, but I do appreciate the fact that he's made the time to come on with us and be able to talk. Because the things that we have discussed, it was important, because he also filled in some of the pieces that I had with the 200 nukes that we talked about several weeks ago, and Kurt Weldon being a part of all of that, and how he's a key person still in it, and the understanding of what's going on, and will lead back to 9/11 as well, and what took place there.
So that was interesting. You were asking him, like, where would the false flags or the nuke scare come from? Because I was thinking about that too with this peace deal, hopefully, already completed. Oh, there he is. Okay,
Yeah.
let's just get him back on real quick. Hey, Juan.
Hey,
All right.
sorry about that.
No. It's completely understandable. I was telling people how much we appreciated you still being with us and being on the other side of the world, and it's important. And one of the questions is that we were just about to talk about was, 2 things: the potential of a false flag with the nuclear, and trying to change the footing because of these damn war hawks and stuff, right? And the deep state, but then also the who's funding and getting the abilities to be able to rebuild Ukraine, because those are key factors in both.
Well, but again, here's where I was going on that.
Yeah.
When Trump had Zelensky in the Oval Office the first time, it was a ceasefire agreement that Zelensky had agreed to sign, and Putin had agreed to sign. Stop the killing, murder, stop feeding the demons. Okay, the blood sacrifice. And then we'll work out the mechanics of a peace deal. It might take a while, okay? And Zelensky got advised by the NATO members, specifically England, don't take a ceasefire, because if you do, you lose any leverage into a peace deal. And besides that, you're going to win this thing because we're going to help you. In fact, when he all of a sudden changed his mind, wouldn't agree to sign the ceasefire with Trump until there was a peace deal, within 12 hours, he was at the front of the front door there at 10 Downing Street, getting a promise from the Brits to send British troops in to help
Yeah,
him in the
boots on the
war.
ground.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so it was the Brits that were trying to keep this thing going amongst the rest of the NATO partners, and the real rub beyond that was the rest of the story behind the scenes. Trump made it clear the American taxpayer isn't paying to rebuild Ukraine. The belief of all these globalista has been that America, the American people, are going to rebuild Ukraine to the tune of, $1.5 trillion or $2 trillion, which probably will be $5 trillion. Last year, it was estimated it was going to be, $500 billion. And then saner minds came in and said, "Are you kidding me? No way. It's going to be $1.5 trillion, 2 trillion, 3 trillion. By the time these people get through, it'll be 20 trillion. It'll be some astronomical figure.
Oh
Shoot,
yeah,
they'll
because
have
they'll all be on the
spaceports
milk
built
tit,
in there.
you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, they'll be the most advanced in the world. They'll have the, tallest buildings and, everything, all at the American taxpayers' expense. So Trump said no and hell no. You want to build your way out of it? You guys egged these people on to go to war. The Russians showed up just on time. You European globalists, you Eurocentric banker crowd. No, if you want money to rebuild Ukraine and shoot, half your population has left Ukraine and gone all over the rest of the world, and a significant portion of them is dead.
Right.
You want to rebuild Ukraine? You can use your rare earth elements. We'll help you set up the mining. We'll help you. We'll provide a market to buy that, but it's going to be your resources that you have to pay. So that if anybody else in the world, it's not even about Ukraine at this point. Anybody else in the world, you're going to blow things up. You want to go to war. You want to start a war. Maybe you need to think a little bit more about it. You want to get involved in stuff that might lead to war. Think again, because it's your resources, your people, your efforts that are going to have to go into rebuilding your country. Maybe you'll think twice about it the next time around. Trump wasn't going to make the American people have to pay for that, which has been the case all the way along. Okay. So even now, that's part of the big rub. They're hoping by everybody showing up to put the lean on Trump that America should show up and pay to rebuild Ukraine. That's the rub. And Trump isn't going to put the burden on us. He's saying, "Are you kidding me? You Brits, you there in France, all the rest of you there around the neighborhood, you are egging Ukraine on at some level. You can help pay to rebuild this thing." And by the way, they keep saying like Russia's going to invade Europe. Are you kidding me? All Russia wanted to do in invading Europe was run a pipeline with oil and gas over there and be able to do business with them. That's their big crime. And from a Brit perspective, they didn't want oil and gas coming out of Russia.
Yeah, because they don't want the
And
boogeyman
especially,
getting money.
yeah, and they
They
also
need the
didn't want,
boogeyman where he's like under the thumb, you know?
well, it's not even the boogeyman. You can say that. What the deal was, it's a not made here mentality. They didn't want Germany getting fat in Russian oil and
Yeah.
more productive. Germany's the real threat to England for power in that region. And Germany's allowed itself to be completely handcuffed. They had a perfect nuclear reactor, brand new, state of the art, best in the world. And they let the Green Movement out of England and these
Shut it down.
Eurocentrist people force them to shut it down, dismantle it, remove it. And it sat on a dock up there in one of the Scandinavian countries, I think it was in Sweden, for several years. And a acquaintance of mine, pretty good acquaintance. He actually is the one that bought it and then moved it to Egypt. They're going to install it in Egypt.
And that's
And
the
so,
epitome of self-mutilation to your own body.
well, because again, now, you're going to have it with wind and solar. In Germany, are you out of your mind? That's like Texas. We're
I know.
going to wind and solar in Texas. Are you kidding me? You got oil all over underground and all that, the density and all that. We're going to wind and solar. Here in
Yeah, and
Germany,
then
you're in
do
the
the
northern
stupid
climate.
shit that they did when we had the freeze in February, and basically they didn't, weren't able to keep the lights on, and people freaking froze in their houses and stuff, and everything was ridiculous. And it was like, we have the ability. All they had to do was say okay, and they could have turned on the backup system, which is all run by natural gas, which you ain't getting cold enough to freeze natural gas and in its piping and stuff, and nobody would even have had a flicker. So they murdered people.
Well, let me go a different place on energy just for a second, and I'll help all you guys that are out there doing show prep. Nobody in the American press is talking about this. I've seen virtually nothing on this. Okay, you got to get your act together mentally and fight the right wars at the right time. Okay, and you have all this stuff about AI going on all over the world, etc. At the end of the day, you can say you heard it here with me first, okay? There's other people who are saying it, but it's not getting out, okay, from the right conversations. So there's other people who are talking about this, but it's just not getting out. And I'll bet you nobody in this audience has heard this yet. The most important arms race taking place on planet Earth right now, this second, is an energy race for maximum power output. Advanced civilizations always use more power, by the way. They need maximum power. I mean, as in, if you put in 100 brand new, state of the art, full on, all out nuclear plants, most, the big nuclear plants only put out about a gigawatt of energy. So you'd need 100 of them just to meet the power requirement anticipated as needed in the next 10 years solely for artificial intelligence. And the problem is where we would have 100 gigawatt systems need here in the U.S. beyond anything that's going on right now, just for AI in the world the way it's going. China's already on track and nearly has that number on deck right now. And they're not worried about it being nuclear. They've got 300 coal-fired plants that they're setting up right now. They have 700 of these various nuclear systems that they're putting in place. And what are they putting them in place for? What they see as the next great move of mankind.
Yeah, but there's 0-point energy and different applications of 0-point energy that we already have.
Hold on a second. You're not hearing what I'm saying. You are not hearing what I'm saying. You are not hearing what I'm saying.
No, I do hear what you're saying.
Hold on. No, I gotta clarify something for you. You can do it any way you want to.
Correct. I agree with that.
Whoever wins the energy race, actually getting functional systems in place to feed the energy hogs and AI, wins planet Earth in the next round. That's the way a lot of the people gaming it out are gaming it. So if that's the case, if you don't have a winning strategy for putting out more energy than the other guy, you'll lose the race just purely because of who's got the most energy. It's not even the technical side of the most advanced systems as far as the actual AI system.
You're talking about the supply itself and the volume of it.
which is an energy issue. Yes.
Yes, I agree. And I'm in the energy business, so I understand it. I do know that.
Yep. So
And
I'm getting, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just saying that, it's interesting that because, they are building a lot of that here in Texas as far as the systems and stuff for AI and to be able to.
No. You gotta remember. Hold on. It won't be a technology race or a server race. It will be strictly the energy to turn the
Itself.
machines, to keep the machines going at the level they're capable of. We can build the systems faster than we can build the power to run those systems at this point in time. That's the
Right.
race right now.
I got you. Yeah, and I do understand that.
So when you have a
what?
green revolution and you're shutting stuff down, you're setting yourself up to lose what has been gamed out as the more important race. Now, I'm not saying that I'm promoting this. I think
Right.
it's
No, I
it's
agree.
something different than what's best for mankind. But the other side of the coin is China doesn't care what you think. In fact, they hope you think different than they do. The way they've gamed it out and the way our own military intelligence areas have gamed it out. That's the fight moving forward, is who's going to build the AI systems out faster and be able to support it to essentially take control of everything. It is actually very much so a Revelation 666 type of a thing. But at the very least, I want the good guys to win the race. And
Yeah, it's the
our
new
systems
arms
beat their
race type
system.
situation,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it is
Yeah.
what it is.
And power
Yes.
generation is at a core portion of it. So before it's too late, in a worst case scenario, we got to blow their systems up before they are able to work at full speed, before their systems blow ours up. So, and it doesn't
So,
mean with a bomb or dropping a bomb, but anyway, go ahead.
no, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. And so with what we see going on right now in DC and the federalization of, DC and with the National Guard and so on and so forth, and that we know that this goes back all the way to June the 14th, basically, when the Marines out of Camp Pendleton got activated. This is much bigger than what people realize. What do you see is being set as far as the stage? Because, the arrest wars are coming, and how are they going to? I know it's very simple to do it with DC, but in your opinion, how does Trump move from just Washington as far as the militarization, as far as with the police and with the military to gain control? Does he use moving that into like New York, Chicago, LA, and all of these other cities? Because we know there's 17 cities that they're going to fall back into to basically
14, but yeah. 14.
Yeah, okay. And so within that, and how long of a fight do you see that being, as far as, with the holdout, for people just to kind of be prepared for the worst case scenario?
Well, I'd put that in kind of a minor thing. All it is that you're going to have some. We're probably has successfully passed the point where we're worried about civil war in America for a
Agreed.
bunch of logistical reasons. But
Agreed.
that doesn't mean that you won't have civil unrest.
Yes.
And so Trump did a lot of things right off the bat to help head off civil war, including arresting right off the bat. I mean, I was getting texts, 15 minutes after Trump was sworn in, Well, he was still talking before he even started signing the executive orders for guys that were getting orders to report for various things. And what it ended up being was to go out and assist in local law enforcement where certain gang leaders were designated as terrorists, gang groups from certain countries. And so that authorized military to be involved in picking up these domestic terrorists. And the videos are out there. You don't have to wonder. They went to Gitmo. Okay, Gitmo's alive
Yep.
and well. Doesn't have politicians there yet, but it's got a bunch of gang leaders there. And then, as far as timing, this next step, you've got a bunch of congressional interviews, inquiries coming up in September and October. Hillary is October 9th, and Bill is October 14th. And on the Russia stuff and the Epstein stuff, I think that's the last shot. And then I believe the end of October.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that some big time arrests are going to happen maybe the last week of October, you know?
Yeah. So anyway,
He's just putting all of his ducks in a row to get things where they need to be first, right?
yeah. And I don't know if you're hearing it on your end. I'm getting quite a bit of clipping on my end on the audio, so I hope it's not doing that for the audience.
It is. It just started doing it.
Yeah, and it may be my location or something like that at that time of night.
Yeah.
But there's lots of stuff I'd love to tell you guys about going on at other levels. I will say this: prayer required. We're at a difficult moment, and there's so much more going on behind the scenes, and I'll share it within some of the other shows that I do moving through this. But even here at the other end of the world, things happening here have huge effect across the world and back to the States, and vice versa. Let me just tell you. So Trump put a 50% tariff on South Africa as a result of what he was saying with the South African president. And he said, if you want me to take the tariff off, you got to actively go after these people that are killing the farmers, stop the terrorism, stop the land theft. And, they sing songs about killing whitey within this, at the schools. It's taught at the schools in much of the country. Down here in the Cape region, the people here are like, okay, we're done. We're going to secede. We will not be part of this. It's, the population down here is 90% Christian. And, the colors don't, they're not, they get treated differently here. It's whites, coloreds, that's the majority of the population. And then the blacks, which are really, they don't have a history in this part of the country. They're all kind of imported here. Nobody has a history beyond the white settlers that came here in the 1650s. All the other arguments to the side is just not true. So, and they don't want the race stuff here. They're not interested. This area, the country is not that way. The ones that are here are terroristic, shipped in. But what Trump did when he put the 50% tariff on has had huge impact on the South African economy. And I guarantee you Trump's people gained the South. They know what the fallout is. Goodyear Tire walked away from a huge facility they have here with several hundred employees. You have a huge car manufacturing operations here. BMW and Mercedes and Ford all have huge plants here in South Africa. What is being debated right now up in Stuttgart, Germany, is, I would argue, not whether to shut down the Mercedes plant here in South Africa, but how soon. I wouldn't be at all surprised within the next 2 weeks, maybe the next couple of days, that Mercedes announces that they are shutting down operations here in South Africa. Why is that important? You don't think it affects America? It affects America tremendously. Why?
Yeah, it's a global impact.
No. It's more than that. All C-Class Mercedes are manufactured here in South Africa. That's
really?
where they ship them into the U.S. And so
Right.
you think they're built somewhere else, no, they're built right here in South Africa. Yeah. And because of the 50% tariff, Mercedes is not going to be able to sell cars at a price point that competes with Toyota and Ford and anybody else, right? That's why Japan's been working all the deals to keep from getting these huge tariffs on them. So South Africa, the Mercedes manufacturing facility here, I suspect they will announce very shortly that they're leaving. In fact, there was the rumor mill was going even over this last weekend that a lot of critical infrastructure of the manufacturing here at the Mercedes plant was being shipped out over the weekend, just this last weekend. So why that's relevant is because if Mercedes leaves, Goodyear's gone. Within the broader system, Mercedes has about 5,000 employees. Goodyear had about 500. But there's about 100,000 port jobs, maybe more. One of the figures that was given internally was it's probably more like 150,000 jobs will be lost if Mercedes leaves. And they'll be lost literally within the next 60 days after Mercedes makes that announcement. And I believe for lots of reasons, Mercedes will have to make that announcement almost immediately. That's going to affect the politics here in South Africa. And it won't affect, amazingly enough, the ANC, which is technically running the country, as much. They'll get hurt. They'll get hurt bad. But it won't hurt as much as it will the Democratic Alliance, which is that crowd run loosely out of England by the Soros crowd and like that. And that's where Trump wants to go after. And then on top of that, within what's going to be revealed in the U.S. over the remainder of this year and all into next year is the financing of the Democratic Party, not just in America, but across the world, the Act Blue stuff and like that, of which South Africa is one of the primary places in the world that they have thrown a lot of this money into. You're going to see a political upset that is absolutely phenomenal at a moment when there's huge considerations going into a breakup of South Africa. And it probably won't break into two pieces. It may fracture into several. That affects the balance across other parts of the world. And if the Mercedes plant closes here, the reality is it opens up jobs in America. Somebody's going to fill that gap. And Ford has manufacturing here. Other people, BMW is here and others. It will cause a global trade imbalance. It's a vacuum that's going to have to be filled other places. So there's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts. And so anyway, I should let you go. I know we've got a little bit of disruption on the signal. I'd love to do it again sometime soon. And I hope that helps people a little bit and some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, absolutely, Juan, and I do appreciate you. Thank you very much, and I know the audience appreciates you. And thank you for your time this evening. And we'll get together with you again in a week or so, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Super. And then, by the way, over at Jennifer's shop, thedformac.com, you got to put the dot in there. She's got a pretty good deal in there. She ran out of her own book, Be Deliciously Healthy. And so we moved an allocation of books over to her shop of my Watch the Water book. We call it that. It's the Japanese English edition, which is really a very, very fun, cool, kind of a collector item. We didn't print that many. and they're just a very fun, cool, different version of Kid by the Side of the Road. But
yeah, hey, text Kelly the links on that, and then I'll have her put them in on the show at the bottom.
yeah, the main thing I was going to say is Jennifer has a package there that includes the parasite protocols and some information on that. So she's got a kind of a special
Awesome.
deal. Anyway, appreciate all of you folks. Sorry with the disruption in the communication.
Oh, no, it's okay. We do what we have to do, Juan. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And like I said, send those links over to Kelly, and I'll have her put them in the show notes.
All right. Beautiful, folks. Good night.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, brother. Good night, everybody.